Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on.
I will take you places where you've never been. I will show you things that you have never seen, and I will see the life run out of you.
Growing Up in Two Haunted Condos by Spencer. I grew up in 2 haunted condos. For background, in 2011, me, my mom, uncle, and grandpa moved into a condo in downtown Tempe, Arizona. And for example, let's name the condos 203 and 204, both built in the 70s. I lived in 203 for about 8 years and 204 for 6 years. They were both part of the same building, but shared the same back wall with the exact same layouts, just flipped. For a visual, when you walk in, it's a straight shot into the living room, and the kitchen was behind a wall right behind it. And along that wall separating those 2 front rooms was this long hallway to the left of the entrance with the 3-bed and 2-bath. When I was really young, we first moved into 203, and I remember that it was fine for the first couple of months. But after about a year, once we got my first cat, some things started to get super weird. When it would be late at night, my cat would sit in the hallway and just growl for hours into the living room until we had to drag him back to our room. I've also had multiple experiences in each room with horrible sleep paralysis, or just bad dreams. I don't think I should have been having at 5 years old. My mom and I used to share the master bedroom where I've had multiple experiences. One instance where she was washing up getting ready for bed with the bathroom door closed, and I was on the bed on my tablet. I heard the sound of fabric rustling on the edge of the bed next to me, and when I looked up, it was this completely black figure's head peeking up at me. I freaked out and just froze. I heard the same thing on the other side, and saw the exact same thing, and that just repeated on each side with me looking back and forth until my mom came out of the bathroom and got into bed with me. And no, my cat was not in the room. We let him in later that night because he was clawing on the door. I also had an experience in that same room about a year prior when my grandma was living with us. I remember her putting me in timeout in that room with the lights off, only being able to see from the blinds still being open in the middle of the day. I remember I was lying down after throwing a fit, and I heard the closet door creaking open, and seeing what looked like a woman peeking out at me, and I screamed and hid under the blankets, eventually falling asleep. You could take that as me having an overactive imagination as a child, but I still don't know what the fuck that was or anything that I saw after that. We had to move out of 203 because the owner passed away and the family was planning on selling the condo, but luckily at the time, the place directly behind us, 204, was available. I only know a little history about 204, only because I used to play with the previous tenant's son every day after school, until they started to shoo me away from their place and not let me see him anymore for who knows what. All I knew about his parents and grandmother were that they smoked and drank a lot, and we could hear whenever the family would argue through me and my mom's bedroom wall. That family only lived there for a couple of months, and it was vacant for about 4 before we had to move, and that's important. My mom's boyfriend moved in with us, and we immediately started experiencing activity. Right after my parents signed the lease on the place, my mom and I went to check the place out, and in the master bedroom closet, there was what looked like a body stain on the carpet in there. It was this long, dark brown blotch, and the owners never said or did anything about it. So my mom was the one who ended up cleaning it up with our carpet cleaner. Once we got more settled in after a couple of weeks, my mom was in bed trying to fall asleep, and my stepdad was in the shower connected to their room, and she heard a woman talking in the bathroom. She asked if he was on the phone or watching a video or anything, but he said no, that he didn't even hear anything. The next day, in the same situation, my mom was in bed trying to fall asleep for work, and my stepdad was outside on the patio. He used to watch YouTube and smoke out on the patio when it was dark and cooler out. And my mom clear as day, heard this man running and screaming bloody murder for help in this grass patch we had on the side of the house, running from one side of the street to the other, where my stepdad was. She told me that she ran out to my stepdad asking if he heard that man because it was so loud, but he once again denied hearing anything. That same night, about 30 minutes later, both me and my mom heard him slam the glass sliding door open and run to the back of the house to their room, asking if she was okay, which turned out he heard my mom's voice screaming for his help from inside. I remember hearing them run over to each other, but I don't remember hearing any of the screaming that they did. Another time, my mom was getting ready for work around 5 a.m., and when she was coming into the kitchen, this metal pan we had on a hook up on a shelf suddenly broke off the hook and flew directly at her, hitting against the tile. We still have it, and there's a giant-ass dent on the side of it. I remember that happening and waking me up and going to see what was going on, and at the time, my mom just told me it had fallen on accident. She didn't want to scare me. My bedroom was adjacent to theirs and had the opening to the attic at the top of the closet. Starting from the first week to around 3 months, every single night, there would be really heavy footsteps above my room. It scared me to the point that I made my stepdad check the attic for me, but we didn't end up seeing anything up there but old furniture. There was another time we all went out to dinner and turned the lights off before leaving. Once we got back, my bathroom light and sink were turned on. We all tried to rationalize it, maybe that it was a squatter, like before I said the place had been vacant for months. In our spare bedroom, we used it for my stepdad's home office and our storage library room with a bunch of shelves. Every single time you would walk by that room, you would see someone standing in the middle of the room in front of the blinds. We all tried to keep it to ourselves for months so that we wouldn't scare each other. I remember the one time I was brave. I tried to do the math in my head, turning the lights on and off, seeing if there was anything in that vicinity that could take the shape of someone standing there. But I didn't see anything wrong or that would look like a person. There was nothing in the way of the blinds, and we all started to just keep the door closed. And that happened all the way up until we moved out a couple of months ago. There were also multiple times in my room that I'd be trying to fall asleep and feel someone walk up behind me when I was facing in the other direction in bed. I'd be too scared to move or even breathe too loud. Back to hearing people talk. Whenever my parents would be at church late, I'd hear a man and a woman talking in their room when no one else was home, so I always locked my door out of fear. Backtracking to that weird, shadowy black figure I saw when I was little. It always comes back to me and my family. I was on the phone with my friend one night, that my mom knows pretty well, and she said goodnight to us both before she went to bed. But later, when she was asleep, she woke up inside of her dream and heard me and what sounded like my friend, I'll call him M, talking. In her dream, she came into my room and scolded me and my friend for not only being up late, but that he was in our house so late and that he needed to go home. What she described to me was this black figure that looked exactly like M. Voice, body, and height to a T, just with no features. When she was yelling at it in her dream, it slid itself out of my room against the wall and across the hall to our washer and dryer, which aren't in a room. We have this folding door that has about 2 inches between the door and the machines. But people can't fit in there. She watched it open the door and slide in and close it on itself. She felt freaked out and walked back into her room, which is right next to that door. When she went into her bedroom in the dream, my stepdad was asleep in her dream on the bed, but his head was hanging off the bed at a weird angle. And from behind the headboard, way further back, was a black figure's head, slowly getting closer to her around the bed, until she got very scared. In her dream, she woke up and told me everything the next day, and I told Em, and we were all incredibly freaked out. A couple of weeks later, it was late at night, and my mom had told me to get my laundry done earlier in the evening, but I ended up getting to it pretty late at night. Our hallway lights didn't work at the time, so I was getting my clothes out of the dryer from that same folding door. And right before I was about to finish up and close the door, I saw a completely black head peeking out at me from behind the door, right next to where my parents' room is. I closed the door to see if my mom was trying to scare me, but their bedroom door was closed, and they also have a pretty loud creaky door, and I would have heard it if she came out. I ran back to my room and kept the door closed until the next day. What concerns me the most is that this thing has been imitating people close to us, and that really does concern me and pisses me off. My mom and I are Dene, and from Navajo Nation. We've tried to get the house blessed and say prayers or sage it ourselves, and much more. It has worked for a couple of months, but it just kept coming back in all these creepy-ass ways. In our current place, nothing has happened, and we just hope it stays that way. Felt Like We Weren't Welcome in the Forest by Alternative Run. I don't think I've ever felt so certain that a forest was trying to get rid of me before, possibly even kill me. I've always been prone to paranormal experiences growing up. My dad's family has had terrible experiences, but for some reason skipped my dad, except for his time living in the countryside. It was a long weekend for me, so I went down to the Skagit River for a bit of fly fishing. And for those of you who don't know, there's still some First Nations people living nearby to this day, and the area has a lot of history. Anyway, I had 2 days left of vacation, and I wanted to do that bit of fishing, then rest on Monday so I had time to rest before the work week. I went with my dad and my girlfriend as sort of a chill trip. No boating required, just waders, boots, and 3 rods. I had a bad feeling before we left, and when I checked the forecast, it said there was a 40% chance of thunderstorms in the area, so I wanted to call it off right then and there. But we had already spent $70 on flies for the Skagit in particular, so we didn't really want to cancel. When we got there, we set up the rods, and as I finished tying on my fly, I heard a loud, deep voice in my ear that sounded a bit like an oil, but more sharp and succinct rather than a drawn-out like, "Woo!" It seriously freaked me out, and I wanted to leave right then and there, but we had already spent so much in gas for my truck to get to that part of the river, and I didn't want to call it off. I talked to my dad and girlfriend, and neither of them heard the voice despite it being so loud in my ear. Okay, fine, chalk it up to a coincidence. Then, on top of that, we took the wrong trail to get down to the banks of the river and ended up walking about 2 miles into the forest. By that point, we realized we were heading the wrong way, but my dad didn't want to turn around and said we should just cut through the forest down to the river, then walk along the river to find the car again on the way back. It felt like my dad wasn't really thinking straight, or tensions were running higher than usual. My girlfriend didn't have any long sleeves, so I was firmly against that. And he went into the middle of the forest to try and find a path while we were still arguing, so my girlfriend and I just sat there on the main trail waiting. While we were waiting, a widowmaker, that is a large tree limb, fell about 70 feet, and I pulled my girlfriend out of the way just in time. If that had hit her, it probably would have paralyzed her or worse. At that point, I firmly believed we should turn back, so we went back the way we came and found the actual trail to the river, which was only 50 feet in. We got to fishing, and I was getting an unnatural amount of snags. The flies for Skagit were relatively more expensive than normal, so I ended up wading into the chest-deep water to save the fly. For some reason, everywhere it got snagged had a large drop, meaning if I fell, I would have been swept away into the river, possibly drowning or freezing as it was glacier-fed. It just got snagged exactly at a precarious point, and it's hard to tell if there was a drop in running water, let alone still water. It genuinely felt like the forest was trying to bait me or kill me because I didn't listen to it before, not to mention that widowmaker. So we decided to leave after just an hour of fishing, Not a single bite, but I was just happy to be alive. I don't think I'll be going back there ever, and terrible things happened on the way home too, like I was a magnet for negative energy. I don't think it was paranormal though, but it was honestly traumatizing. I even witnessed a motorcycle fatality in real time on the way back. This is probably the worst paranormal experience I've ever had, or it could just be a weird coincidence, but I'll probably be listening to my intuition next time. I've had other experiences before in the forests of BC, but yeah, this is the most explicit warning I've ever been given. I Live in a Haunted House by Status Candidate. So, my house was built in the 1920s and the garage in the 80s, but before that it was a rabbit hutch. In the 1940s, a little boy choked and died in the basement. Most of my family has lived here since the 60s. My great-uncle Jack built the house, and my great-grandparents moved here in the 60s too. I'll first start with my father's story when he was little. Whenever he came over to see his grandparents, he would go downstairs to play, because that's where all the toys were, and my great-grandma ran a daycare. Sometimes things would be in weird places, or it just felt like something was watching you down there. One day, my father spent the night downstairs, and as he was getting ready for bed, he once again felt something watching him. He ignored it and turned off the light and went to bed. Around midnight, all of a sudden the bathroom light clicked on and then off, and he heard running. He looked around, and no one was there. But then he heard it again. And then he heard it. A little laugh. He told whatever it was to go away, and the light clicked on and off again. And my father refused to go down there for a very long time after that. Fast forward to when I lived there with my parents and siblings. My bedroom is in the basement, and one day after school I was home alone downstairs doing homework. One of my dogs was there with me, and all of a sudden he started to growl at something and ran upstairs as if he was afraid. I thought it was weird, but I really needed to get my math homework done. Then, the bathroom light clicked on. I was confused, but I went to click it off, and right as I went to click it, I heard a little giggle, kind of coming from around the corner. I ran upstairs and called my dad, telling him I needed to move because I was never going back to that house again. He came home and took me downstairs, and the light was back on again. He turned it off and told me the little boy was just playing, and to ignore it. He then told me that the garage, which is really creepy, did similar things. My dad had a business he operated in the garage, and one day while he was working, the door opened and then closed. Lights turned on and off multiple times. Then the TV, which hasn't worked since the 90s and has no remote, turned on and started playing The Simpsons. Other stuff that happened was tools wouldn't be in their spot, but then when you would look again, it would be sitting there looking brand new. Things would be knocked all over the place. It was creepy. The worst part was tearing down the garage and building a new house on top of it. I mean, that house is going to be haunted as fuck. My mother said weird things went on in the basement, too. She heard voices, and where our washer and dryer were, you were right next to the space underneath the stairs, and she said she'd seen things watching her underneath it. We also have a family ranch where 10 generations of my family have lived. We see dead family members walking around, and things have grabbed my shoulder and whispered my name, and footsteps. Again, weird and scary. Finally, my father and I have this weird thing. We both dream of dead people. I don't know who they are, but one I kind of do. My great-great-grandfather. He told me oddly specific stuff no one else could know, and my father dreamed of his uncle, telling him that he died in a car accident. Then he woke up and found out that my uncle actually had. So, weird and spooky stuff. Update. So, in the last 2 months since I shared this, nothing much has happened until about a week ago. We are starting to tear down the garage as it's old and falling apart, and we have plans to add a new building afterwards. Well, since we've begun the process to tear down the garage, stuff has started to act up again. Doors keep opening and closing again, and my dad has gotten weird dreams about the garage, dreams telling him not to tear it down. Along with that, stuff has been acting up in the basement alongside the garage. I've been having weird dreams too. Now I'm used to having dreams about people I don't know. So a couple of the dreams aren't too weird, just normal talking. But a couple of nights ago, I had a dream that shook me to my core. It started off like all my other dreams of me sitting in a chair. Now, normally someone will be sitting across from me in a brown leather chair. When this happens, I can always see their full face and body. But this time, it was different. The other person was just a shadow and nothing else. He didn't say anything to me that I can remember, and I woke up almost instantly when the dream began, though. Now, this next thing happened this morning. I woke up at 5 o'clock to go to the gym. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth when I heard it. Footsteps. I could hear them go from the kitchen to the bathroom upstairs and then to the living room. I thought, of course, it was my parents, as they still live upstairs, and I walked up the stairs expecting to see my father in his recliner watching TV. But I walked around the house. There was nothing. Both my parents were asleep. I was rattled by that and decided that that was my sign to not go to the gym and go back to bed. I crawled back into bed, which is right under the living room, and then I heard the recliner go back and forth, as if someone was sitting in it. Again, no one was upstairs. Everyone in the house was asleep. Everything has gotten even weirder since we started taking down the garage. I don't know what to do anymore with this house.